and today I have a wonderful person again, Joan Watson. I could probably spend half of this segment just telling you about her. She has a great background. She graduated from Christendom College, BA in History, Franciscan University with an MA in Theology. She was in Nashville to be a part of the explosion of Catholic culture there. She's worked with Dr. Scott Hahn at the St. Paul Center for Biblical Theology, the Dominican Sisters at St. Cecilia and Aquinas. I could go on and on. Right now, she is currently the Pilgrim Formation Manager for Verso Ministry. So Joni, and the way I know Joni is because we served on the National Advisory Committee to the USCCB, and we had so much fun. She's just a terrific gal. How you doing, Joni?
I'm doing great, although it always makes me tired when you talk about everything I've done. I kind of want to take a nap.
Not yet. About 8 minutes from now, you can take a nap, Joni. One of the things, Joni, that I love is you write weekly for the Integrated Catholic, and you have some great insights, and those are probably going to be what we focus on Thursdays, but things might change. But you wrote the week of May 9th on the daily conversions, and I love, you start out talking about a great quote from Ave Maria Network. I'm not sure I said that right. Can I say that, and then you jump into why that was the beginning of your idea for writing that, and along with the Acts? I want to give the quote. What if we began to see the world as people in the midst of their conversion stories? Rather than to pass judgment on sinners, perhaps we begin to see them as potential saints. Rather than see ourselves as comfortably converted, shouldn't we see each day as a new opportunity to grow in holiness? If we aren't growing, we're stagnant. Instead, let's go be saints. So, which came first? Jose's quote or the reading from the Acts of the Apostles?
So it's kind of a mix of everything. I love Ave Maria Network, and I read a lot of his stuff, and it seems so practical. I have to say the paragraph you quoted is from the article, and that was actually Joan Watson. So that
was Joni. Ooh, all right, because I thought I saw his name linked to it. Oh, yay. Yeah. Well, then you're right up there, Joni.
Well, and it comes from his writing about the idea that we shouldn't pass judgment on people because they're still in the middle of their story. And so we too are sinners, right?
Right.
The article came from me thinking about Paul's conversion, which was the daily reading for last Friday, and wondering if I would let Paul do his work today, or would I pass judgment on Paul? Would I let Paul recover from his previous life and go out and preach and teach? Or if Paul was alive today, would we be really skeptical of him? And so it just made me kind of think about our own conversions and our own path of conversions. And, we see a snapshot of Paul. What we don't see in Acts, they mention it in Acts, but Paul spends a lot of time after his conversion going off and praying, and he doesn't go to work right away. He spends a lot of time praying and learning before he goes to preach. But I was just thinking, if Paul was alive today, would we use past Paul against him? I think some of us would.
Yeah. And you use, I'm sure this is from Cardinal George. So I didn't mess this one up, Joni. But you use a quote from him that says, everything is permitted and nothing is forgiven, when he's talking about our culture. And I want to dig in a little bit there with the idea of, do you think the availability of social media is part of what makes forgiveness a hard thing in our society?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We know everything about everyone at every moment, and we know even lies about people, right? Like, it's so easy to pass judgment, to gossip about people, and we don't know we're doing it because it's as easy as pushing share, right? Or pushing like, and we're gossiping about people's sins. I think sometimes we think like, well, if it's true, why can't I tell somebody about it? Well, right. It's a sin to gossip about somebody regardless of whether or not it's true. But we just pass like news stories on, and we're like, oh, well, we're just helping educate people. Do people really need to know that? Am I the person that needs to share that? So absolutely, Pat. I think social media makes it so easy to do it without us even realizing it.
And I think part of it too, Joni, is that they don't, you can dig up the past history of anybody on any social media platform. And so you go back to that instead of who they are now. Like you said with St. Paul, if he'd have been using Twitter, talking about killing the Christians and stamping out the Christians, and when he had his conversion, people would have went back to those Twitter accounts and said, hey,
right.
Hey, looky here, this is who he is. No, that's who he was. Yeah. And I think that's such a dangerous position to be in, isn't it, in a culture?
It is. And I'd say in the article, conversion's not overnight. We see a snapshot of Paul getting knocked off his horse and having this conversion, but Paul still had things he had to work through. And I have things I need to work through. So even though I am Catholic, even though I go out and I preach and I write and I am a work in progress. And please don't judge me, especially based on something I said 5 years ago, heavens. But have patience with me because we're all in this journey. I think about that even like everyone wants to know who Pope Leo is. And everyone's looking at like what Pope Leo wrote as, Cardinal Prevost and what he wrote as like, let the man just like govern the church right now and everyone just take a chill pill and pray for him, right?
Exactly. So, Joni, you're a cradle Catholic, as am I. I think so often we see these dramatic conversion stories of people that, just came from maybe a life of immorality or whatever, and now they are on fire for the Lord. How do you talk about a conversion story with someone who's a cradle Catholic? Because I think a lot of times they doubt that they've ever had one of those.
Yes. Well, I remember, so you mentioned that I work for Scott Hahn, and I do some work with the St. Paul Center for Biblical Theology. When I was working for him, I was often the only cradle Catholic in the room. And, everybody had the most amazing stories of conversion, whether it was like an intellectual conversion and I was like, well, look at me, right? And I began to actually feel bad about myself because I just went to Mass every Sunday my whole life. And, what have I done?
Yeah.
But I have to look at like, I'm still in need of conversion. Like, I'm still in need of conversion because I am a sinner and tomorrow needs to be better than today. And how can I conform my life to Christ better tomorrow? So we're all in need of conversion. But we've all had moments where God's worked in our life, even if it hasn't been from paganism to Catholicism, right? We've all had moments where God has worked, and we all have a testimony to share. And I think it's important to learn how to share our story because there are other people that are in our shoes as well. And we all need to conform our lives to Christ better. So how has Christ helped me? And it's good to think about that and to think about where God has worked in our lives so that we can share it with others.
Oh, yeah. And I think, Joni, this was just a great insight into conversion and conversion stories. And I want to end with one of the things you say. God has given me 24 hours today. How will these hours be a part of my conversion story? If they aren't lived for him, who were they lived for? Thanks, Joni. This was excellent.